Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody joining us from around the world. First of all, thank you all so much for joining us for today's talk. This is the second talk in a 3-week series that we are calling New Realities. Today's talk is called Leading and Learning Through Uncertainty. I am Jordan Huggins. I will be your moderator for today. If you have any issues, any technical issues, you can chat me via your GoToWebinar portal. There's a drop-down menu that just says chat. You can find me out and shoot me a message. Um, we are joined today by Janice Wang, CEO of Alvanon, and Katherine Cole, CEO of Motif. We're very lucky to have both of them. Just one other quick housekeeping note. Today's talk is going to run about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. We really want to open it up to a Q&A afterwards, so there will be plenty of time. If you want to submit questions, we will ask those questions and do our best to answer all of them. So if you have a question that you want to ask, there is a drop-down panel also in your GoToWebinar portal that just says questions, and you can send those directly to me, and I will ask those to the speakers. Now, without further ado, Janice, Kathy, why don't you guys go ahead and take it away?
Good morning, everyone in the Americas. Good afternoon to everyone in Europe, and good evening to all my fellow Asians. We are so happy that you've taken some time out of your virtual day to come listen to Kathy and I speak a little bit about our journey as leaders in difficult times. Last week, when we did the last webinar, Donna Howard and I were talking about leadership, and we focused on the importance of a plan and how executive teams sometimes miss the granularity of everyday tasks that can be really difficult for working teams, and how each team member needs to be given a strategic vision, a tactical interim mission, and some flexibility to get their job done. For all of you who are in New York, and for those of you on social media, you've probably seen quite a lot of videos about Governor Andrew Cuomo. And regardless of your politics, suffice to say that Governor Cuomo has probably given many people a sense of stability in quite difficult times. He states the facts, he breaks down the numbers, he says what he knows, he says what he doesn't know, he actually says a lot. And he provides transparency into what his teams are doing. And he often kind of runs off with a lot of empathy and love for people. And he calls into the culture of New York, and especially for the New York tough. He knows it's hard. And if you don't believe in the power of his very clear press briefings in this time of crisis, try looking up how many people who used to hate him, and now these ladies now have new secret crushes on Governor Cuomo on Facebook. It's a complete political turnaround. And, you know, it's funny, but for me, I really wouldn't mind emulating that.
Janice, thanks. That's such a great example to start with. This really is a wake-up call for our industry, what's happening now. You know, in every nook and cranny of the supply chain, companies are impacted. And to add what you've just said, Janice, there's some clear leadership traits that apply to all sizes of companies or countries and governments, no matter where they are, skills that really shine during times of crisis. And those are clarity and foresight. We have to take action even in uncertainty. Empathy and compassion for employees, vendors, suppliers. Everyone is going through upheaval right now. We have to realize that. We have to manage expectations. You can't promise too much right now or overpromise, because nobody knows what's going to happen. And then most importantly, adaptability. Things are changing so fast, and as leaders, we constantly have to be on our toes and be responsive. We're actually living day to day. You know, so I'm based here in Hong Kong. I'm here in Hong Kong now, and you know, we're in week 10 or 11 of this, and about 3 weeks ago, things were starting to look up. People were starting to go out in public again. They were shopping. After weeks of working at home, we were all slowly heading back into the office. And actually, at that point, about 80% of employees were back in their offices working, especially in big companies. But as of last weekend, suddenly the situation has changed yet again, because as cases in other countries have exploded, we suddenly have a new increase in cases, and now Hong Kong has actually gone into a further lockdown, and we're back to a new level of uncertainty with our clients, suppliers, and community of learners that are affected worldwide. At Motif, we're a small team, so a bunch of us are based here in Hong Kong, but we do have people located all over. So I have team members outside London, France, in New York City, Florida, Australia. And every day I wake up wondering what I should tell the team or how our plans should shift based on the latest news, because suddenly everybody's impacted. And I have to consider everyone's well-being, but also think about how do we best stay productive. So as you said, Janice, this time is about empowering teams and giving flexibility so people can do their work. This is no time for autocracy. It's about having the right people in the right roles who can execute under pressure. You never know where good ideas or information will bubble up in an organization. And there's a great concept from US General Nadia West that everyone in the organization needs to help their leaders see around corners. And I love that concept and imagery, because that's really what we're trying to do right now, see around the corners that are ahead of us. So Janice, are you seeing kind of hope or despair ahead of us?
I want to say on any given day, I've got like this somewhat, bipolar spectrum of feeling that's, I am experiencing, On the hope side, 2 days ago, I was reading the news and I saw that, there was a shopper in Wuhan. Wuhan had just opened again, and it said, after 2 months of being trapped at home, I just want a revenge shop. And I thought, oh my God, that's wonderful. It's such wonderful news. And it brings me to think that this too shall pass. And then on the flip side of that, I understand that it doesn't seem so obvious right now for everybody who's, in the West, because what we see in the press is that there's these massive furloughs of all retail businesses, and we know that our retail colleagues are really hurting. Business is business, and if there's no business out there, there can't be any employees. But for how I feel is that as long as we can hold out, we have a duty, both as individuals and as corporations, to try and minimize that impact for everyone. And it's hard. As leaders, we have to recognize that everyone that we're working with are probably going through some kind of stages of grief, right? And most of this is surrounding this idea that life's not going to be the same again. We recognize that we all have to work through, denial. And we saw this, a few weeks ago, and anger and bargaining and depression. And at some point, and I think we saw this a lot in Asia, is that we come to acceptance. We understand that this is going to go on for a while, but it does get better. And we will come out of this. And all of these feelings, they don't happen in a day. Actually, on any given day, I'm feeling all 5 of them. But so we might actually have to go into retrenching quite a lot of people. But we probably have the opportunity to do that well. We have to give them resources, on immediate options of how to get governmental assistance, access to health insurance, health providers, or some sort of financial assistance. And after that one day where you have to do that, you can't just leave them. We've got to go back and provide with emotional support and help that they can find to get another job. And it can be as simple as just staying in touch with team members or ex-team members and helping them with a LinkedIn profile and calling on the community to be a community, because we are a very, very strong one. But also I recognize that Kathy, we talked lots of people will remain inside organizations. And we have to recognize that all of those people are also working without some of their colleagues, right? Without some of the normal protocols. And you know what? Actually, we've seen so much innovation and hacking come out of this on the ground situation. We've had to make things actually work for ourselves. How do you find that, us as businesses, how can we do this better?
So, Janice, I believe the worst thing that we can do right now is go into a deep freeze and think we'll just wait out this storm. And by that, I mean focusing on short-term problems, canceling some of the longer-term investments or transformation projects, maybe sustainability projects, or cutting training budgets. We need instead to think of this actually as an opportunity to shore up capabilities for a new way of doing business. My biggest fear is that we emerge from this and go back to doing things the way we've always have as an industry, that we don't learn anything, or worse, we regress. But we need to think about how we give the right tools to employees now so that they can be armed and ready to innovate and implement, so that we really do see a new normal and not just give it lip service.
So of these skills, what do you think we should be prioritizing as an organization or even as individuals? Which things are business critical for teams?
Well, I think this is all about future-proofing the business for when the crisis passes. Crisis or no crisis, they're basic skills that still stand, and knowing that we might see, or we should hopefully see, a new normal in 6 to 12 months, there's certainly a new blend of skills that's needed. Let's think about, 3D transformation, training around 3D transformation, or how improving the efficiency of the sampling and product development process by doing things more virtually or digitally. Things like, let's say, how to run a fit session virtually. Suddenly that becomes more important. Or, at Motif, we have a mid-sized brand client that is putting teams through our apparel costing online course right now. This costing, of course, is top of mind for a lot of companies. Or something like strategic sourcing, as companies need to find their way through sourcing challenges that have only been heightened by recent trade wars and now what's going on right now. And these types of training are great examples of not merely investing for the short term, but investing in a longer term, efficient and sustainable practice to support the business. Another important fact right now is that employees are feeling the brunt of all this too. And you started to get at this. Many are feel furloughed of their jobs, or they're feeling isolated with this tedious existence of being stuck at home with little to no outlets, and suddenly every day looks the same. And, if you all don't remember one thing of what I say today, this I think is most important, that frankly, professional development is a strong signal and tool right now for employers to show employees that their commitment to staying true to company ethos.
I think what I'm hearing is that all of these brands, everybody has a DNA, and in a sense, consumers are attracted to companies because of what they stand for. Even before this crisis, we'd seen more and more of this in recent years. Looking at Patagonia, for example, right? And partially, I think people now want to know that even though it's the toughest time out there, that the commitment of a brand is to the ongoing development of their employees. Because, the corporations who do this the best, they actually have this kind of community and, like family vibe, and that's all very kind of like namaste. But do you have any practical steps for companies to do this?
I certainly do. So here are 5 key tactics for shoring up skills and capabilities during tough times. Number 1, build a cross-functional team. This may include people from L&D and HR, but they should also include people from the business units and actually people on the ground.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here and say that actually it really has to be from business units and on the ground. And L&D and HR, for all of the teams, I love what they're doing. I think sometimes they also can recognize that, you know, the people who are on the ground are the ones that have the skill sets and they know what they need. And so please, L&D and HR teams, can you listen to your on the ground teams? Because, you know, my dad used to always say, the only people who really know how to do the job are the people doing the job. And so they're the ones who have the best ideas to all of this. Sorry, bit of a
Yeah,
side.
no, that's perfect, because that's how we get more impactful training, especially business critical training and skills, maybe more the technical skills that's needed too, is those are the people on the ground that are going to know best. So number 2, focus and prioritize on business critical and fundamental processes. So look for training. Companies may already have face-to-face training that can easily be ported to an online environment, or external e-learning content that you can leverage. Number 3, consider the infrastructure. Think about where your people are today and what limitations, especially with technology, that they may have.
Right. So, because like if you're in a factory, most people would have a mobile phone, right? They're lucky they have a mobile tablet too, but maybe they have decent Wi-Fi. Maybe they have a really slow download speed. But I also think that content's very important here, right? Because we've got to consider what is an immediate life skill for workers, or what is the skill that also brings them to an enhanced pay grade. And you know, the content's going to differ if you're a junior technician versus if you are a manager.
Yeah. And another even more important reason to consider the infrastructure, like what's the best way for delivering that type of content. Number 4, engage. And actually, I believe in a time like this, what we're going through right now, this is probably the most important. We really need to build in human interactions into all of the training. So you can move things online, but it's got to be engaging and interactive with a human element, especially in a time like this where people are isolated and working on their own. You know, this is as simple as using video conferencing, discussion forums, peer-to-peer feedback, team breakouts. Technology can do wonders now, and I think a lot of us, if you've got kids at home that are having to homeschool, you're seeing it's amazing the tools that teachers are using. So it's a great time to try these out and take advantage of the tools. But most important, training needs to be social, collaborative, and engaging. And I just want to say, go ahead.
Sorry, you know, you mentioned, you know, school kids, and one of the things is like us. My daughters, for instance, are doing this online learning, and one of the things that I find is that, you know, they just keep tapping the screen, so they learn how to figure out what the test actually is through the learning, but then you have to engage them as you know, in front. Their teachers literally have to come online and say, "Hi, what are you actually doing here?" You know, and actually have that conversation with them for them to actually absorb the learning. So
yeah, and there's many ways you can build in interactions, so actually the retention is higher, and if people have to use it right away in their job, or in your case, like your kids, if they've got to apply it right away. So there is ways to build in. There are ways to build in these interactive elements to really make it stick, and again, have a human touch to it, so they're not just watching videos. And then lastly, keep it simple. People, we can see people have a lot of potential personal and professional distractions right now, and going digital means breaking things down into bite-sized chunks so people can learn while doing other things. And across the world, it's great to see trainers are actually using digital environments to move their content online, and Motif is working with a lot of these, and that there's a level of forgiveness right now. So now is not the time to worry about perfection in your training programs, but actually, more importantly, relevancy and impact. So yeah, so those are the 5 key tactics. And so Janice, what do you think about using this time to upskill or reskill?
Look, I think business is going to change significantly, and I know this is not really that easy of a time to discuss these kinds of changes, but I think when executives and managers and workers and people in teams, when we're all kind of aligned in our social contract, we figure out what's the best way of leveraging everyone's skills in the most empowering way possible. And so kind of the slide that you're seeing right now is something that happened to us over the past 2 years. 2 years ago, we were looking at this whole kind of they were all talking about Industrial Revolution 4.0, and that the machines are coming, and people are going to get laid off. And at our mannequin factory, we kind of started to realize that the physical making of fiberglass production is going to become obsolete. And the problem for us was that some of our best factory masters, people who have built our manufacturing capability, they've been with us for over 15 years. These, our Yang Sifu and Joni and Jing, they might actually have no job, and they're not at retirement age, right? So my brother John kind of went up and to talk really candidly with them, understanding what their needs are, what they want as their careers, how long of a career they want, and at the same time explain what we're seeing as the future. And immediately, Yang Sifu actually first of them, he's something like 58, something like that, and he said, wait, hold on a sec. We can transfer our skills. We're going to tell us what you need us to do. I'm going to learn a 3D program because I can take all of my physical working and I can make it into, I can actually take my physical molding skills and I can transfer this 3D into 3D. And there's going to be a significant amount of engineering involved that you don't know about because, you don't maybe know how these things would actually fit together and what do we have to do there. And so on the right, you'll see kind of a thing standing next to a 3D printing machine. And what they've been doing is that they've been training new skills and experimenting for about a year now. And they've brought new ideas and are working through a timetable of transition for their own teams to come onto these new methodologies. So it's worked out quite well.
Wow, Janice, that's such a great story of reskilling, and I think it's such a great example of how people, especially people that right now that are fearful of losing jobs, and also we hear a lot about the future of work and automation and how do we take what skills we have today and amend them and enhance them. So before we turn to Q&A, some quick closing thoughts from me are that this is really a time to diversify our capabilities and skills, either individually and also as an organization. This disruption is giving us an opportunity to think and do things differently, and really let's not miss out on that. Secondly, this is a time for knowledge sharing. At Motif, this is what we live and breathe every day. We're all about providing tools and resources for companies and individuals to identify, share, and obtain knowledge, all in a digital environment. So we're young, we're only 3 years old, and you could say we're just still getting started, but our vision is to be that hub for shared knowledge for individuals, companies, and passionate communities that are setting out to change industry. All of us who've been in the industry know there's a lot of knowledge that resides in the heads of people with experience. Other industries have been much better at coming together to share knowledge and fostering a pipeline of new talent with that knowledge in a way that benefits the industry as a whole. And it's high time for our industry to do the same. So this is my call out to you. I'm going to take this opportunity to make a plea from Motif that if you have any expertise as an experienced professional or a community, as an industry body or faculty, or as a company willing to share best practices or champion the development of professional education material for the current generation and next generation, then we need you. So we are on the lookout for broad strategic expertise. That might be, expertise, maybe strategic sourcing or trade regulations or trade finance. So it can be broad strategic expertise, but also very niche technical expertise. So, imagine things like being able to manage a denim wash facility or 3D pattern cutting. If you fall into these categories, please reach out to us, because if you hold dear the improvement of the industry like we do, then please let's collaborate. So on that note, I'm going to turn this back to Jordan, unless Janice, you have any final words, but Janice and I are here to answer your question. We've talked quite a bit so far, and now we want to hear what's burning on your minds.
Great. Kathy, Janice, thank you both so much for all of that. We do have several questions. I'll just go ahead and jump into it. First of all, I think that we all know, in regards to sustainability, that when pressure is the bottom line, and especially right now, sustainability is usually the first thing that's at risk of falling as a priority. So will COVID-19 disrupt fashion sustainability commitments?
If I can take that one, I'm going to say that, it better not, because I think the main part of this is that we've started to recognize, we've got way too much inventory out there, right? And we've also realized that the way that we live, if there's anything to be learned from this this crisis, is that the way that we live is not going to be sustainable, and it behooves us to figure out a better way of doing things. And so sustainability practices can mean a lot of things. It can go from anything from new materials, right, to better materials, to better production of materials, to more efficient processes, to learning how to, do better planning. And all of these things kind of come into, I don't think people should see it as just a sustainability initiative. It's not an initiative. It is the new normal. So that's my 2 cents anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, this goes back to thinking short term or longer term. Yes, you can think short term and cut the programs or the investment, but I think the point is we need to, as an industry, think longer term, that really it's all about processes. Sustainability is about fixing our processes, and now's the time to do that. This is the time for a reevaluation, transition. So the ones that win out in this are the ones that don't shelve these projects and initiatives and are take this into heart now. I think we're in an urgent situation. The industry is in general, I mean, not even considering COVID-19, but now's the time, to see a light at the end of the tunnel. We can't drop this stuff now. We're at a point where we've got to continue focusing on this and not go back to the way we've been doing things.
Next
Great,
question.
thank you for that. Yeah, this next question comes from Sarah, and you both just touched on it, and I wanted to ask this because she seems to want it. Sarah's asking, why is this not the time to freeze? And I think you both actually just touched on this, but I felt like it was probably worth repeating.
Actually, there's some.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say unfortunately, I can't look it up right now, but there's some statistic that shows that, the companies that don't lay off people and that don't go to a standstill actually do better through a crisis, or do better. It's all about being able to resume when things ease up. That's what we're preparing for. So you can go into a deep freeze, but the day that, when things start to ease up and business starts getting back to normal, you got to be quick to get those wheels rolling. So you got to keep the wheels on the bus right now, and you got to be positioned to get back into business when times do ease up.
I can give actually quite a good example to something like this. When the financial crisis actually happened, we saw one of the very large retailers. It's a mass goods retailer, cut an entire division that was devoted to actually vendor management, and it was vendor training. And we were absolutely astounded, because this was the reason, this group of people were the reason why they had excellent quality control, and people used to love their going to them, and they were a mass market kind of brand. And when they cut that, you saw immediate quality drops about 3 months down the line, 3 to 6 months down the line in goods. And so when they came back, they had absolutely lost all of their cachet. It went from being one of the, the best ranges that we'd ever seen, to not being so. People weren't actually just going to spend it. Consumers actually yearned for that old quality of it. And I think you see this across the board, and because it was a number that actually would not have made too much of a difference. But the trust between the vendor and that particular mass retailer was quite broken for a while. It took them about 5 to 6 years to build it back up again.
Great. Thank you both so much. Stacy is asking, for small businesses starting their digital transition, what is the low-hanging fruit for getting started?
Okay, so first of all is to actually figure out where your libraries are. Meaning this: if your stuff sits on Excel costing sheets, right? The first thing you can do is move that to Google Sheets so that you can have some collaborative kind of interaction with your vendor, right? And the reason why I'm saying this might seem really basic, but being able to collaboratively work, as not to think about having revisions, is one of the big challenges that we see at actually large brands when they have really a lot of SKUs. So if you start thinking about everything that you have that is in a physical repository, let's say you have a library of styles that you really like and that you're going to make season after season, and you take all of those patterns that you've actually physically made and you digitize them. Even that is your first step to actually going towards kind of your digital journey. So if you were previously, and it's just really very silly things like, if I was keeping all my physical receipts in my pocket, and I'm suddenly going to use one of those receipt keepers so that I can see whether I'm spending money on fabric or spending money at on stationery or whatever it is in my accounting system. All of these really small steps for a small business, actually they seem really daunting at first, but everything, when you start to implement those steps and look at what you physically do and move it to digital, it helps. So those are my 2 cents.
So just in addition to what Janice says, if you start and step back and think about what you hope to do with your digital processes. So at Motif, we actually have a 3D transformation course that kind of goes through, helps you walk through how to think about, how to make the changes, and how do you think through the foundations of your what you need for your 3D processes. that Janice has mentioned. So I highly recommend check that out.
Great, thank you both. This next question, Kathy, it's actually to jump back to what you were talking about. You mentioned that it's very important now, especially to listen to your people. You said, it's important to have the right people in the right places. You never know where great ideas are going to bubble up from. What can managers, directors, executives, officers do to be open, to be more open, to make sure that the pipelines to even be able to hear ideas are open?
So yeah, and this it's a great question, Jordan, and there, of course, big companies and small companies, very different structures. So it's much harder in a big company when you have many layers in an organization. So that's when it's so important that it cascades down from the top, this listening and kind of learning culture in an organization, that at each level, depending on how hierarchical it is, but you have people listening at each, and your team leaders, your managers are also in touch with and listening to the ideas from their teams, and then you have a mechanism for bubbling these ideas up. Smaller organizations, it's much easier. Although, in a time like this where everyone's very busy, it's, like I can't, and we're all working remotely, so I don't pass everybody in the hallway or over lunch anymore. So actually at times like this, it's even harder. So it's all about, I'm, making sure, I make sure we've got whole team meetings with everyone, and then we have smaller team meetings where people that might be quieter in the big team meetings have a chance to express and give ideas, and then these have a way to make it into the bigger brainstorming sessions. So yeah, it's all about most important, I think, is having this ethos of a culture that listens, and making sure your team managers and business unit leaders are also doing the same thing with their teams.
Great, thank you. Yeah, really great answer. I'll ask a handful. We got a bunch of questions coming in. You both have struck a nerve. It seems like it's, especially considering everything that's going on. This next question I wanted to get to talk about, it comes from Anna, who seems to be recent or soon to be graduate. We know hiring currently is and it will continue to halt and kind of slow down, just due to the state of the economy and businesses and everything. But do you have any advice on how graduates can persuade or showcase their knowledge and skills, which perhaps could be useful during this time? And how do you think graduates can tap into what the two of you have been talking about today?
So firstly, congratulations if you're going to be graduating this year. I know that the normal milestones of graduation don't apply to this graduating class, and for that, I think every parent, or even every person who's going through this, it sucks. But I think part of this recognizes that you're going to be the most well-equipped going forward into this next world, because you have had to go through this very painful period, and you will be going through a painful period. I would say to you that showcasing your talents is probably not is more difficult these days. Having a willingness to learn, however, is going to be a very key factor in here. There's, regardless of, let's say, something even like motif, there's a wealth of information out there. This generation of graduates is going to be the one that actually has access to so much more knowledge, or actually so much more, content that's available. You can ask Google anything, right? And it will spill out a ton of information to you. And part of that is actually, I think, spending this time seeing what you truly love and enjoy through going through this learning process. I know that's a bit waffly, but I think that, you know, this is a time for reflection to a certain extent, and that doesn't help the fact that you need to go out there and get a job, right? Because you do have bills to pay, and of course as well student debt, and it's not an easy time. I think part of this is having a willingness to put yourself out there.
So the one thing I would say is in times like this, people are willing to help. And I think it's even more important now to get out there and network and reach out to people in industry, and don't be afraid to do that. So find mentors in industry. Janice, this reminds me actually of when we sat in New York around that CEO roundtable talking about skills needed in the industry. And this was back in September, and almost everyone said, the industry is changing so fast. We need a younger mindset. We need fresh ideas. And so, yeah, but then when something like this, and when the industry is going through a crisis like this, I think that's even more so. So yeah, my advice would be, hey, use this time to reach out to people. Go find, whether it's on LinkedIn, it's industry associations, go find people you can chat with and find mentors, and don't be afraid to reach too high and find people you can get advice from.
Thank you both. Really great. I think that we have time for maybe one, maybe two more questions. We're going to do our best. The goal of these new reality talks for everybody was just to kind of get in and out real quick in less than an hour. So I'm going to try and wrap it up in the next couple of minutes with one or two more questions. This next question is from Winston. How is digital going to impact the entire supply chain after this event? Do you think it will mean fragmentation further, as more and more digitization will call for fragmentation of choice?
So I think what's going to actually happen is that I don't know about the fragmentation of choice, right? Because I think the fragmentation that's going to happen is that people are going to be, we actually have to stop thinking about inventory as millions of units as opposed to millions of units of one, right? And I think that's something that we've been talking about for quite a while now, is that if we had the ability to make things that people actually wanted, right? And we changed the cycle of as opposed to you go into a store and you have some things that you can that you immediately can buy off the rack, as opposed to thinking about how we're going to do markdowns. All of those things I think are coming to the forefront. So I think after this, the supply chain is going to have to learn all these new skills, right? It also has to learn how to not make so much. I mean, making a unit of one is very different from making a unit of a dozen, right? Or 100 dozen. So the efficiencies and the skills and the of scale are a little bit different in that kind of in that kind of scenario. I do think though that it's front and center, and so therefore we have to look at learning better, more efficient processes in order to deal with that, right? Jordan?
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much. I maybe one more question. This actually comes from Maxie, and I think this is to your question and your call to action, Kathy. Earlier, Maxie wants to know, how can I reach out to Motif to offer my expertise?
Great question. So I think when we go to the thank you slide, my email's on there. Feel free to email me, katherinecole.motif.org, or to keep it simple, you can always send an email to hello@motif.org and we will get it.
Great. Thank you, guys. So we have so many questions from everybody. We're unfortunately not going to be able to get to all of them. What I can tell you is that we will be distributing a copy of this webinar as soon as the recording is ready. Thank you guys tuning in. Janice, Kathy, I don't know if you had any final notes you wanted to cover before I send this out.
All I want to say is thank you to everybody for joining us. And look, we're always here, so email us and we'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. And keep learning. We really, both Kathy and I have this view that it's only people who do those jobs and that can actually teach certain new jobs. You all have skills that you can bring to the table, and I think we've seen at this time our industry really has to come together to become one community and to learn from each other and to teach each other and to come up with new ways of doing things. So thank you very much.
Likewise, thank you from me also. Yeah, thank you for taking time out of your schedules to listen to us, and I hope we wish you all a safe, healthy few weeks as we all combat this.
Yes. Thank you all again so much for tuning in to our second talk in our new reality series. I hope that you tune in next week, same time, 10 a.m. Eastern. On Wednesday, April 8th, we will have Alice Rodriguez and Tracy Rickard, both our senior consultants here at Alvanon, and they will be discussing fitting inclusive sizes digitally. It's a great deep dive into what it takes to fit extended and plus sizes in a virtual environment in 3D. Thank you all again, and from Alvanon and Motif, I hope that you're staying safe. And I hope you're staying sane, and very importantly, I hope you're staying inside. Thank you all again, and have a great day.